Hey yo, welcome back to Glorious Vibes. Happy to have you here. Super excited as always to be out here in nature and just be here, be able to record again to share with you some of the vibes. It's beautiful, it's nice. I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with me now that I always intentionally get time to stop and then appreciate what's around me. The lake, the birds, the beach, the people kind of just, the kids, riding back and forth and the park and, people having a good time. That's really important. It's important to notice the things that are around us, right? Because life is so busy, like we're so bombarded with so much, and more often than not, we don't take time to notice those things. And I think, it's intentionally made that way, right? So that our minds are really focused on one thing and one thing only, right? The pursuit of things. I intentionally just make sure that I stop and notice everything that's around me because I think it's important. And that is regardless whether or not I've had a really long day at work, super tired or not, it doesn't really matter. It is important to stop and to notice the things around you, the people around you, the trees, the flowers and the grass and the animals and the things just around you. It's just great. I'm encouraging you to do that as part of building that, long-lasting happiness. Try to do that. Try to stop for a moment. Whether you're driving or not, just take a moment, stop somewhere and just notice the things that are around you. You'll be surprised at how much that's really refreshing and clearing of your mind. And so anyways, back here, before I continue, want to encourage you again to subscribe and hit the subscribe button and make sure that you're sharing with your friends and family. Again, because the whole point of this is to just make sure that we're spreading the vibes, right? Making sure that which we know is not just staying with us, but we're sharing the vibes. That's really important. Anyways, kind of like in our series that we started around building long-lasting happiness, which was really important. The series that I started kind of sharing with you all, and so today I'm just gonna continue with part 3 of that. If you haven't watched the other part 1 and part 2, I strongly encourage you to be able to watch that. Part 1 was kind of grounding yourself in something higher than you, bigger than you. And part 2 focused more on being absolutely content with yourself, like being happy with who you are and where you are. And that's really important. It's not just by mistake that I say who you are and where you are, because more often than not, we're happy with who we are, but not necessarily happy where we are in life, right? And again, as I said, there's more details into that. So check out that video, that part 2. But today I want to focus on part 3 of this series. And the part 3 of the series is really going to focus mostly on, not letting anybody define you, right? Not letting anybody or anything define you. And that's really important. And I'm just going to focus on one thing, right? And there's a lot of things that really have kind of helped define us. So many things have helped define who we become, right? Education, right? If you have a certain level of education, you have to present yourself a certain way. You have to talk a certain way. Otherwise, your kind of credibility get questioned. Or, if you dress a certain way or present yourself a certain way, then, people are most likely to believe you. I mean, there's just a lot of things in there, right? And work, right? Title, jobs. We all put those things out there on LinkedIn. I mean, you go on LinkedIn, you're going to see all kinds of stuff, me included, right? You put your degrees, your PhDs, your EDDs, your MED, your CRM, your all kinds of stuff, right? And all of that excellent is awesome. All those things are great. Because again, it's stopping appreciating the milestones, not taking anything for granted, because those things are really important. So make sure you are appreciating those things, because you know what? The sleepless nights and all the things that it takes to get to that place, it takes a lot. And so you have to be able to stop and to appreciate those things. But do not let those things define who you become. And that's a thing that I realized a long time ago. And I made a decision a long time ago that I'm never going to let work define who I become. I just won't do that. I can't do that. Work is defining a lot of people and what they become. It's fascinating that some conversation I had with my friends, and I say, what kind of jobs are you looking for? They're looking for a job that pays all the benefits. And again, don't get me wrong, all those things are great, right? It pays my health insurance, gives me retirement, and good pay so I can afford my mortgage and all those things, right? And the most thing that I've heard most recently a lot, and I want something that would help me settle where I can retire. And for me, it's just like, whoa, hold on a second, right? You're looking for work that can help you retire. Yeah, we all want to retire and be somewhere. But when you are so, when your life is so defined with your work, by your work, what you do, like the things that you do Monday through Friday or Monday through Sunday or however many days you get to go, right? And that gets to define you. It means that becomes the center of your life. You cannot do anything else without that. This is where you start to see people hardly take vacations. It's where you start to see people, like, as soon as there's a minor recession, her heartbeat rate just goes up, because it's like all the hopes are put into this one place. As if that one place is no longer there, it's the end of everything else, right? And so all your hopes, everything around me, around you, get defined by this thing. Everything else get defined by these things. And I tell you this, more often than not, people will be saying like, yeah, no, that's, that's not true. Yeah, I know, because it's not intentional. It happens good. We don't even realize it. And this is why I said I'm not married to any job. I'm not. I don't go to any company, to any place where I'm like, I'm coming here to work until I retire. No. First of all, I think I'll be bored to death to be staying in one place for like 40 years. Oh, my Lord. I mean, it has to be something totally excellently amazing, because my brain doesn't work that way. My brain likes to be challenged. If you're going to challenge me, and continuously continue to challenge me, yeah, that'd be great. Other than that, absolutely not. Right? But that's beside the point. That's another thing. But what I'm saying, what I'm saying is, I've seen a lot of this, and I've seen a lot of this from friends where the job they do define them. I think there's some suicidal rate somewhere in Japan, I believe, where they were forcing people to take a vacation, because people have centered their jobs so much that the job define what they become, who they become, define their happiness, right? If the paycheck goes up, it's great. We're happy. If the paycheck goes down, there's a pay cut, it's suicidal rates go up. If there's a recession coming, heart attack, high blood pressure, all that stuff. Why? Because all the hopes have been put into this one place, and the wrong place, for to be honest with you, right? So I refused a long time ago to let anything else but me define me, right? That I'm not going to be enslaved by anything because I want to make... And let me just make something clear, that one of the things that I've seen is like all those things, especially work, they define us because they're tied into material possessions, right? It is the mortgage that we have to pay. It's the next house that we need to buy. It is all of these things that we need to have. And again, don't get me wrong, all those things are important. But it becomes dangerous and takes away your happiness when that becomes the center of your life. When before you think about going on vacation, you have, you have to think twice. When you're staying to work like past 5 o'clock, you're 7, 8, 9 o'clock, you're still working. Work is becoming center. I've seen a lot of marriages, fall apart. I've seen a lot of friends. In fact, a friend of mine died. A friend of mine died who centered his work so much. But the 2008, economic collapse that happened, I lost a friend. He died outside in his car. And the day before that, we'd had a conversation where the thing he told me was like, what am I going to do now? Because we knew that part of the program was going to get a budget cut, right? And so he'd invested so much, and work was everything that he had. It became like a center of his happiness. His heart stopped in a car with a sandwich in his hand. I want you to think about that for a second. This is why I say I refuse to have anything else define my happiness except me. I get to define that. And I'm not going to tie it to anything. I will never tie my happiness to what I have in terms of work, in terms of awards, in terms of education, in terms of paycheck. I will never tie my happiness to that. I get to define that. I get to define and to put the boundaries in place. I get to center something else in place of work. My happiness comes first, and it is centered in so many different places. So I guess what I'm saying to you is this. What is it that's really defining you? What's defining your happiness? What is defining the center of your happiness? And that's a place where you need to stop and think. Because more often than not, we don't think about those things, right? Because it becomes so organic. We are trained to think that way. We're trained to think Monday through Friday. Look at our school systems. It's the same thing. Monday through Friday, right? You go to school in the morning, you're done around 3 o'clock. In some countries until 5 o'clock. It's the same work schedule that you do. Basically, from an early age, people are being trained to what is coming. And we center that around, like that becomes the center of our universe, because that is tied to our future. It's tied to our earning. It's tied to our possession. And we know how much we're getting bombarded with all those things, right? They keep telling you it's constant, it's just coming. You need the next suit. You want the next house. You want the next car. You want the next thing. Your bank account needs to be this big. And I've been watching lately, and one of the things that I've seen is, that they're talking about is, well, you need at least $10 million to retire comfortably. As if like that's the end of the world. If you don't have $10 million, you cannot retire comfortably. Like, no, that's not really that important. It's not. It is not. And so we tie ourselves so much into these material things. And this is like, I'm speaking about my friends, where they become the center of our universe. And so if that becomes the center of our happiness, guess what? We enslave ourselves. We work because we have to achieve those things. And once we achieve those things, and we want to sustain those things, whether on a larger scale or a smaller scale, it's the same thing. Whether you own a $10 million house or $100,000 house, it is the same thing. Once you get it, you sustain it. And so to sustain it, you do everything possible to make sure that it's paid in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, right? Because we center our happiness around that. Again, there is nothing wrong with that. What I'm saying is this. When the source of our happiness becomes that which gives us the means to obtain material things. Material things which we tie into our own happiness, we are no longer happy. Because the day those things disappear, since we tie our happiness into that, this is when you start to see suicidal rates go up. He lost his job, was an engineer at Boeing, had this lifestyle, was really high, well regarded, can no longer afford that, can't afford to be around his friends. What's the solution? Go jump over a bridge, right? And I'm not glorifying that. I'm just saying, this is when we tie our happiness to the wrong thing. So, my point is, do not let anything else define your happiness. Your happiness is your happiness. You have to center it. You have to cultivate it. It is within you. It's a choice. You get to choose that. You get to choose what you want to be happy. And if you don't tie it into something else, it doesn't matter whether anything else is or is not, or what else is happening around, because your happiness is not tied to anything at all. It's just there. And that's really important. I guess I'm going to leave you with this. What is your happiness tied to? What is it that defines your happiness? Is it things? Or is it just there? For me, my happiness is not tied to anything. My happiness is tied to my faith. And so whether I have or not, I'm still happy. Because it's not tied to any material thing. So that's number 3 on our list. Make sure that you are looking at where your happiness is and what it's tied to. Because if it is tied to something else that is material of this world, be careful, because the day that thing is no longer there, well, you risk putting yourself in a situation, and you don't want that. So try that. Try tying your happiness to nothing. Try tying it to nothing, right? Anyways, I appreciate you again for joining me today. And do not forget to subscribe. Until I see you next time on number 4 in the list. Stay happy. Sustain the happiness. It's really important that you do that. All right. I'll talk to y'all later, y'all. Thank you.